It's July 2020, and most of us have been coping with an international pandemic for almost 6 months now. Our country has seen over 2 million people fall susceptible to the virus. More tragically, we've seen over 125,000 people die from COVID-19. And for me, I lost on my birthday one of my dearest friends to COVID-19. Brian was an accomplished professor of history, a world traveler, a phenomenal singer in his local barbershop quartet, and a man who loved living life to the fullest. Mostly, though, Brian and I were colleagues, standing together on the barricades as part of the civil rights movement of the blind in America. I was heartbroken to have Brian die, and it made it clear that this pandemic was something serious. Second, and in more recent weeks, we've seen an organic uprising of many in America, many who are indignant over the systemic racism that continues to manifest itself through the unjustified killings of Black and brown people by representatives of law enforcement. And finally, third, with every passing day, we've witnessed an absence of leadership, integrity, and comfort with that we've traditionally been able to rely on from our governmental officials. These three phenomena have conspired to create an atmosphere of uncertainty, fear, and fundamental institutional and societal instability. In short, the normalcy and predictability, the touchstones that make living life understandable and palatable for most of us, have been stripped away, leaving many of us feeling lost and disoriented. But reason dictates that the unraveling of our society's social fabric cannot be permitted to stand. Fortunately, our brand of activist faith in our UU tradition provides us with the resources and strategies to address and resolve some of these challenges. Challenges that at first blush suggest that all is lost and hopeless. But such a bleak forecast simply cannot be the unalterable promise of tomorrow. Instead, our prospects and potential can be controlled by our actions, advocacy, and coordinated campaign for change. As we celebrate another year of our country's independence, I invite us to examine what our faith offers, no, requires of us. Conscientious UUs. What it makes us do as conscientious UUs. Principles 1 and 5 of our shared belief illuminate the dark path forward. Principle 1 teaches that we are to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every individual. And if we accept this guidance in its truest form, we will do all that we are able to hold safe and secure our sisters and brothers from harm, hatred, and hostility, sentiments that are available in abundant quantities during this era of absent leadership, residual racism, and fear of the unknown stemming from COVID-19. And Principle 5 urges us to be mindful of the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. This principle requires that we embrace every institutional opportunity that a democratic society provides to shape our world. This means we must avail ourselves of every reasonable opportunity to mold the world in which we live, through protests, writing of editorials, participation in every opportunity to engage in policy deliberations, to engage in civil disobedience, and most important, to vote. Failure to take full advantage of our individual and collective power to shape our society is an inexcusable abdication of our responsibility to be good citizens. Perhaps more than any other faith community, Unitarian Universalists charges us to embrace our civic responsibilities with the aim of effective, positive social change. When I was 20 years old in 1988, I cast my first vote for President of the United States. I was heartbroken that my first exercise of the franchise saw me on the losing side, but I was elated to finally be old enough to play my part. But when the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, was adopted, I became truly excited because federal law created a mandate that persons with disabilities should have the right to cast a secret, independent ballot. When this technology was made available, I truly felt the privilege that so many others have enjoyed throughout their entire lives. As part of our continued work on voting and creating opportunities for persons with disabilities, COVID-19 has created a new challenge. Accessible technology exists that allows us to vote privately and independently at the polling place. But where it is clear that almost 75% of Granite Staters will want to cast an absentee ballot in September and November to avoid potential health challenges, actions are now being taken to make New Hampshire adopt practices that will render the absentee voting process as accessible as the in poll voting process. Toward that end, whether it's uncomfortable for me or not, I am stepping up and I am being named as a plaintiff in a lawsuit to require that our Secretary of State adopt policies and procedures that will render the ability for blind and vision impaired people to cast private, independent, absentee ballots. That's what we do when we want to effect change. What we do as caring community members must, to some extent, be determined by our own comfort level and interest. We need not all undertake citizenship in the same way. For me, it's involved walking protest lines to object to paying persons with disabilities sub-minimum wages. It's been standing up for racial justice. And it's been voting, always voting. As we celebrate Independence Day this year, let us remember our love of country through acts of civic engagement instead of exploding fireworks. Let us lift our hands to help our neighbors instead of grilling a hot dog. Let us be mindful of our civic responsibilities. Promotion of civil rights and an affirmation that a good understanding of civics can and must yield a more civil society. As we look at the challenges we face today, virus, political, racism, and the like, go back to principles 1 and 5. Decide what you are comfortable with, but in the spirit of you-ism, do something. Do something that matters. Do something that makes a difference. And do something that says, this act I'm taking is part of my spiritual practice. May it be so, and amen.